All right, we're back. It is COMP1073. That's client-side scripting in the winter 2017 semester, Georgian, and we are week 3, part 3 of our broadcast. We just finished talking about creating a reference to from the app.js file to the index.html document, some kind of element, HTML element on the document we're going to modify somehow. We're usually going to inject code or modify it in some way. So I had a question at break, which was, what if I want to modify CSS? Can I do that? Is it part of the document? It is part of the document, but you can't modify the CSS document directly. What you can do, however, is if I have access to, let's say, for example, this. I have access to my first heading, and I want to make this blue, right? Right now, it doesn't have a color. So here's my first heading, and I want to access first heading. Remember, I have direct control. So if I go first heading dot, let's take a look at this thing. I have attributes. I can change this. Child nodes, class list, class name, right? Client height, client width, all these different things. Data set, directory, that's what that is. Different document options, draggable, element nodes, first child, right? Now, get attributes, right? Get elements, has attribute, means you can check to see if something has an attribute. Does it have an ID attribute? I can check for that. Does it have a class attribute? I can check for that. Hidden, I can make it hidden or visible, right? Hide focus, an ID, the inner HTML, inner text. These are all things that are part of the HTML element object, right? The lang, the last child, my local name, matches, different things here. As you can see, I'm going down because it's going to see it's at the bottom here. Offset, height, node value, on a board. These, anytime you see on like this, these are all built-in events, right? Example, if on copy or on blur or on click, right? I can do that. If my element is clicked, then I can use the on click event. Do I want to do it this way? Remember I talked about the proper way of doing it is with add event listener. I prefer the add event listener way. Can you do it with on click or on something? Because on means when something happens, do it. Yes, you can. Don't recommend, right? Let's keep going. On, cut, on, drag. Anything that's on is an event. But as we go down to the bottom, there are sets. We've got gets and sets. There's remove. We can remove childs. We can remove attributes. I can remove an ID. I can remove a class. I can remove something that's in the attribute stream. I can do that. I can replace a child, right? I can scroll. I can set the scroll or something like that. And then I can set attributes, right? I can do these kind of things, right? So where can I modify my CSS with this? What would you say? Yes. Could. I would never be able to do anything with it again. Once I've removed the ID, once I remove the ID, then my reference to that object would be gone. Right? It would be messed up, right? So I could definitely do things with style. Now, the other thing is that I can notice that I missed is style. See the style attribute? If I click style, and if I go dot, now I have everything that I can do with my CSS, I can do, right? So, for example, my background or my, color, right? Color refers to the text color, right? So I click color. So my style.color is equal to, and you got to put it the same way you write your CSS, right? Some kind of value, like, for example, blue, RGB, blue, so it would be like 00, red, 00, green, FF, blue, right? Right? I could also type the word blue, right? That also would work. And if I did that and went back to my code, you can see that my heading is blue, right? So could I, if I can do it with any CSS property, right? Once I access the style property, anything else comes after that. So an example would be that. What if I wanted to make, right, I want to change the font property of my first heading. How would I do it? Let's say, for example, I wanted to make my font, right? I wanted to make my font of my first heading bold, right? How do I do that? I would go first heading, dot style, dot font, style, right? Font style is equal to bold. Or I can make it font weight. Is it font style or font weight? Yeah, right? You can see the difference. See how it went from blue to white to black? So font weight, right? That's proper. See how it's blue? That's good. It's equal to, I could say bold or 400 or whatever you're going to put it, 700, right? And if I did that, oh, that's bold. How about italic? Is it font weight or font style for italic? Huh? Font style, right? So let's make it so that the font weight is 700, really thick, right? And let's make it so that the first heading dot style dot font style, right? Font style right here. Font style, let's see how it's black. Doesn't like it, right? Is equal to italic. Doesn't give you the code ending here. I just gotta let you know, right? Italic. It's a font weight of 700. It's a lot more bold than the other ones, right? Okay. And I can also change this dynamically. So if you want to see what I'm doing here, let's pull this down so you can see. Here's the change, right? So instead of making my, I'm going to pull this to the side. So I want to change my color from, instead of FF, we'll make it so it's kind of different color. I'll put FF here too. Save. See how it changed right away, right? Because I'm using my light dash server, right? Instead of 700, I want to go 900, right? Any visible change? Not really. What about if I went 300, right? A lot lower, right? So my font bold, my bold becomes really skinny, right? So you can see that it's instant, the stuff that I can do. And I like to work like this because usually I use a big monitor. I have a big monitor at home, or second monitor is usually the way I work. And I have on my left screen, my code, on my right screen, my browser. Change something, bam, I see it. So it's like what you see is what you get. Whatever I change, I modify right away. The other way you can do it on the Mac, right, is if I want to see something, I can kind of crowd it in here, right, and I can choose on this side what it's going to look like, right? Actually, it's very similar on PC, right? You can kind of create your zones like this. So again, if I want to, I can change this back. So if I find that font weight 300 is no good, I can go with 500, right, which changes the font weight. If I don't like italic, I can get rid of it, right? So now it's bold again. If I don't like the color, I can make it, I can change it a little bit differently. So maybe I have a little bit of green in there too, right? If I don't like that. How about the last value? Can I go alpha? Can I actually add an alpha value as well? Like, for example, I go, 0000. Let's make it 0000 again. Right, so there's black, right? But my alpha value is CC. Can I do that? Not really, right? Could I change my transparency in some other way? What's my transparency? How do I change the transparency of an element in CSS? Huh? Yeah, right? So that's how you do it. So I go first heading, dot style, dot opacity, right? Here it is right here, look. And then that's equal to 50%, right? Is it 0.5? Right? Because it's a value that is normalized, right? Normalized value. Normalized means between 0 and 1. Okay? Are we good? Yes.
How do you fire up the server again?
Oh, how you fire up the server? Well, remember that I can run it. Oh, that's the Windows side. Remember, I can run it in. I'm using light server. That's what I'm doing. And anytime I make a change, see how when I make a change to my app.js, it just revitalizes the server, restarts the server. And when it restarts the server, it also syncs with my browser, and then it refreshes my browser. That's what it does. So light server, light-server, I installed it with npm, right? And that's how I did it. Okay? Yes? What do you mean?
You need to install
Light server in each? No, it's global. Yeah. So you go npm. I'll show you the command. So for light server, I've just stopped the server. It's npm install light-server -g for global. If you do that, it'll be available to any project. Then all you have to do inside the project folder, as long as there's an index.html, you just type light-server, and then it triggers. Okay? I like using it because I want to have continuous integration. Huh? Does it work for you? Yeah. If NPM doesn't work for you, it means you have to download and install Node, and you have to go through that whole week 1 video. Okay? What was that? No, it's N, Node Package Manager, NPM. Okay, so again, for me to launch it, it'd be light server, and it would just launch the server again. It would create another link right here, and this now is linked with this. Okay, let's keep going with the PowerPoint a little bit. We haven't even touched the PowerPoint today. It's all about storing data, right? I'm going to talk about variable names and how they are created. There are different kinds of variables: strings, numbers, and Boolean. There isn't int. There's no int in JavaScript. Okay, there's just number, right? Number. The way they are declared, you use a var statement. Var, by the way, I have to be honest with you, is the old way we declare variables. What's the new way that we would use? And it's much better than var. Let, right? And there's a difference between var and let. And I'll talk about that right now. And then I think we should end the day with var and let, because that'll give you an example of what we do. We'll talk about more about this later. I'm going to make this, I don't need to save this anymore. I'm going to make a new document, right? So file new. And I need to draw it out so you understand. So what I want in here is another box, and I want to think about this as the code. So this is my app.js, right? My whole app.js. Here's something. In other languages, right? If I declare a piece of code, if I just do var my variable, right, is equal to 10, right? And if I do this, let's make sure that my variable is a little bit smaller because it's too big. So we'll choose 24 font. So here's my variable is equal to 10. If I declare it down here, right? Can I use my variable in JavaScript up here? Yes. Yes. No. What happens is you're thinking about a compiled language. In a compiled language, wherever we declare a variable typically is the place that it lives, especially if it's in a code block. Let me undo this change and show you what I'm talking about. Let's suppose I have some kind of function. Okay, so we have a function that is this. So here's a box. This is the whole program. And this is a little function here. And we're going to call this function my function. Right? My function. And we'll make it small again. You bear with me while I do this font manipulation stuff. It's not for anything, but just to make it look nice for you guys. My function, right? And inside my function, I have my variable, right? So I have my variable, var, my variable is equal to 10. Okay? And let's make this really small again. We'll make it even smaller than 24, make it 18, just to make sure it fits. Yay. My variable is equal to 10. Question is, now it's inside of a function. I declared it inside the function. So the scope, the availability, the accessibility of my variable, right? Is it available here inside my app.js? No, it's not available out here. It's not available in here, right? Because I declared it inside this code block, right? Instead of a function, we just called it my function right now. We don't know how to make a function yet. Well, actually, we do. Just make it, call it function, and then you made your function, right? But let's suppose that we declare it, huh? Right. But let's suppose that we made it. There is no function right now. I'm making a phantom function called my function, and inside there I made a variable called my variable, and it's not available out here by default, right? Okay. This is how it normally works. What about my function? Can I access my function over here? Yeah. And the reason why we can access my function over here is what happens in JavaScript is hoisting is what it's called, hoisting. So what we actually do is this. I actually create my function, and it actually appears up here, okay? So this, even though it's declared down here, it actually gets moved in interpreter time. When I'm starting to look at every line, JavaScript moves this whole function to the top, right? Now, we do this because I can declare it here, but access it up here, right? But it does the same thing with variables. If I declare a variable down here, underneath the function, it's outside, it's inside the other block. So if I go var my outside variable, right, here's my outside variable. And let's make that font size smaller. So we'll make it, again, we'll make it like 18, and we'll change the color of the text, to something else, just so that way we can, instead of grayscale. Sure. There we go, nice and red. All right, so here's my outside variable. Let's take my outside variable and put it over here, right? But what actually happens when it gets interpreted, I'm not going to save it there right now. What actually happens is it moves here at the end. Why is this bad? What if, when I declare it up here, it messes something up? What if, because the position of where it is when I'm declaring it, I'm using it somewhere else, or it's available and it's being called something else? An example of this would be, what if I called it the same name as my variable, right? And this is the scope issue that I'm talking about. So what I mean by that is, before I answer your question, right? If I call this var my variable again, right? And I make it equal to 20, right? And this is outside, same name, right? Can I do, I'll make it an 18, and we'll make it a different color, make it red, that's it, right? So here's my variable. I put it up here, right? If I leave it up there, my variable, right? What is the value of my variable inside my function? Is it 10 or is it 20? Can I do this? Can I declare a variable up here, right? And then redeclare a variable in my function? Is that allowed? First of all, what do you think? Yes. Yes, it is. Actually, it works in any language, C# and Java as well, right? Okay. But what is the value of my variable? What variable am I referring to here? This variable is a different memory address than this variable. There's two different containers, right? They're different objects. Because I use the var keyword, I'm using the var keyword in both, right? I'm actually creating a space that's different than the other one, okay? Different if I was to use my variable without the var inside my function, then I'm referring to the outer one, right? Because my functions is inside the whole document. So therefore, I have access to anything that's outside. This outside variable is in a document scope, or we call it a global variable. It's available across the entire function, or the entire application, actually, right? If I put my variable inside of on the bottom here, even though it's on the bottom but it's outside of any other function, it's still a global variable, which means it gets hoisted all the way to the top. Right? Okay. And because this is the global variable, this variation, this one up here, and this down here, that's the local variable. The local variable takes precedent, right? Because it's the same name. My variable down inside my function is different than my variable outside the function, and my variable, the value inside that function is 10, right? Outside the function, though, my variable that's inside the function doesn't live outside the function. So therefore, the value of my variable outside the function refers to this one up here, right? Which means it's 20. This weird stuff that goes on with JavaScript and with other languages messes people up because they don't understand what you're referring to. That's why please try not to say that, give the same variable name, number one. That's bad. But the second reason is because of hoisting, the one function is moved up, or the one variable declaration is moved to the top. And this can cause issues, especially when it comes to for loops and looping. You declare a for loop, you say var count is equal to 0, where count is less than some value, count plus plus. Remember you ever do a for loop, right? And you think that count variable is only available inside that for loop. But guess what? It's not. It's available outside the for loop too. And that's kind of a memory leak, yeah? So JavaScript had this problem for a long, long time. And so we corrected it in the latest version of JavaScript. I don't know if it's corrected, but it's been modified so that you can use the newer version as well as the old version. So I can totally do this, var, But the newer way to do it is let. That's the new way of doing it, let. No visible effect over here, all right? But wherever you declare this variable is where it's declared. That is the exact scope it's declared inside of. So when I use let inside of a function, it only lives and dies in that function. If I use let inside of a for loop, it's in that for loop and it dies outside the for loop. Yeah.
But if you use bar in a function, you can live in the function anywhere.
It will, but the for loops is where the big problem is, right? And that's for loops, while loops, anything like that where you declare within closure scope, sometimes it's available outside.
So
Right.
basically, in for loops, if you want to use bars, we have to make sure that count is 0 before we start the loop.
No, but you're setting the count to 0 anyway. But you probably would probably want to use a let statement if you're going to make the variable with the same name outside of it, right? That's all. So we use let. Let is the better way to do it. It's the newer way to declare variables. That's all the time I have today. I think we're kind of at the end. Actually, I got to let the other class in. But I want to mention a couple things. Variables can be, again, we have different variable types, right? Even though JavaScript is loosely typed, doesn't mean there's no variables in JavaScript. It just means the way we declare variables is based on how we assign them. So if I assign a string, then the variable is a string. And if I assign a number, then the variable is a number. And if I assign a Boolean, true or false, then the variable is a Boolean. And I wanted you to go back to what I said maybe last week, which is, if it sounds like a duck and walks like a duck, it's a duck. In other words, duck typing. It'll take on the value of, or the type of what you assign to it, right? And further than that, you can assign something else with a different type later on, which is really bad and people hate it, right? It messes you up. Okay, guys, remember next week, assignment 1 is due Tuesday. You have everything you need with injecting stuff out to your code with assignment 1. I want to see your style. Please don't wait until tonight to start, because tonight, if you don't start tonight, you lose your 2%. That's crazy, right? So get that lab 1 done. Thank you so much.